There are several cases along the years that remain unsolved and are boxed away in some storage room. It is heartbreaking for the families of those who are missing or deceased that neither they nor their loved ones can find peace. In today's case, we'll be discussing how a breakthrough in a cold-blooded case helped solve a cold case murderer in another country. Sometimes, just because people decide to leave their past behind, doesn't mean that the past is forgotten.
In November 2002, Heather Barnett's children came home to find that their mother had been brutally murdered and mutilated in their Bournemouth home.
Somebody had hit her numerous times over the head with a hammer, and after death had dragged her to another part of the house where he'd mutilated her body.
Hey guys, welcome back to Crimeco, your go-to channel for some intriguing and incredible true crime stories. Before we continue with today's case, remember to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications. Help this true crime community grow even more. So buckle up and get ready to go on a wild ride with us. In the idyllic city of Potenza, Italy, there is a beautiful valley between the mountains. While walking through its streets, you can almost breathe history, as well as still see its medieval characteristics plastered all over their enchanting buildings and houses. If there is anything close to time travel, this would definitely be one that takes you to almost 1,000 years back in time. It is hard to imagine that such a lovely place was the home to a disturbed and devious individual like Danilo Restivo. Danilo was born in Sicily in 1972, but in his early years, his family moved to Potenza. Although his family was of great influence and well-known in the community, Danilo was the black sheep of the family. He mostly kept to himself, and his behavior around others, especially girls, was really creepy and awkward. In time, he developed a weird fetish for cutting people's hair, and the police believed he was at least involved in 9 different incidents in which women had their hair cut off. Of course, they couldn't prove it, but Danilo was already on the police's radar for his weird antics. As he grew older naturally, he developed an interest in the opposite sex, but his lack of social skills made him look a bit pathetic and in desperate need for attention. So he would tell girls that he had a gift for them, so they would agree to go on a date with him. Unfortunately, his plans almost never worked out, and in 1992, he was convicted of harassing 5 girls when they turned down his attempts to date them. However, this wasn't his first ride with the police. In 1986, Danilo grabbed 2 small children, tied them up, and cut one of them with a knife. He was arrested, but no charges were filed against him. His family's influence held a lot of power in the city, so they settled the incident with the children's families privately. Once people found out about Danilo's indiscretions, it was harder for him to socialize, but he didn't give up. And this time, he focused his attention towards another young lady. Her name was Elisa Claps, and according to Danilo, she had stopped his advances and agreed to remain friends with him. On the morning of September 12, 1993, Elisa and Danilo met at their local church, and that was the last time she was seen alive. Elisa's older brother, Dildo, became worried when his little sister had not returned home from church. He was aware that she was going to meet Danilo there, so he called to his house and asked if his sister was there with him. But his family told him they knew nothing about his sister and that Danilo was out of town due to his college exams. Visibly worried, Gildo turned to the police, and although they tried to downplay her sister's disappearance, they managed to question Danilo about what happened. When the police showed up at his house, he became agitated and almost hysterical. It could have been due to his poor social skills that he acted that way, but still, his behavior made the police grow suspicious of him. After he managed to compose himself, he stated that he and Elisa had met at church and talked about his issues with a love interest of his. They only talked for about 15 minutes, and she left while he stayed a few more minutes to pray. Just when the police were about to finish the interrogation, Giovanni Motta, then Danilo's sister's fiancé, told them that something had happened to his brother-in-law earlier that day. Motta stated that the day Elisa disappeared, Danilo seemed very distraught and had a cut in one of his hands from a fall in the escalator, so he asked to be accompanied to the hospital. But the detail about the situation that caught the police's eye is that Mata stated that Danilo's jacket appeared to be soaked with something that looked like blood and that he was dirty. Once they left the hospital, they went straight to the Restivo's residence, and he immediately changed clothes. When asked about this, Danilo said it was true, that he had a small accident at the dental school, and that he was scared of blood. That's why his demeanor that day was off. Still, the way he acted made the police highly suspicious of Danilo, and he was questioned again on September 21. He claimed that Elisa had left the church while he stayed to pray, and that she had expressed concern to him because a boy harassed her on her way to church. He admitted that he had tried to have a romantic relationship with her, but she denied his advances, and eventually, she became a friend whom he could trust. The police were looking for clues to solve the case, and eventually, they'd found something interesting. When they searched Elisa's house, they found her diary, in which they noticed it had a missing page. It was suggested that throughout some forensic analysis, the page had words written in Albanian. This fact led the police and people to believe that she might have been kidnapped and sold to an Eastern European mafia gang for prostitution. However, Elisa's brother, Gildo, had another theory. He voiced his concern about how the case was being handled, and he was almost sure that a particular prominent family in Potenza was doing everything they could with their influence to obstruct the investigation. He was dead set that Danilo had done something to Elisa, and his family was helping him to get away with it. Gildo also believed that their influence in the community led the head of the local church, Domenico Sabia, to lock down the place immediately after Elisa's disappearance and refused the police attempts to search for her on the premises. Also, the fact that the Restivo family refused the police request of Danilo's clothes on the day Elisa went missing and a search throughout their house just proved Gildo's theory. In October 1994, Danilo was arrested for the disappearance of Elisa and was held in solitary confinement while he awaited for his trial. In 1996, he was trialed for false testimony and sentenced to 20 months in prison. His defense appealed the sentence, but they lost. However, in Italy, that type of short sentence was suspended, and eventually Danilo walked out of jail as a free man, but with no clear conscience. Soon after his release, he began to plan what his next moves would be. Finally, in March 2002, he moved countries for a new start. When Danilo arrived in Bournemouth, UK, he met the woman with whom he had been having an online romantic relationship. The woman in question was Fiamma Marsengo, who was several years older than him. The age difference didn't seem to bother any of them, and eventually in 2004, they got married. While Elisa's case went cold with no further leads, Danilo was living a new life, but as the saying goes, old habits die hard, and soon he found himself a new target. Heather Barnett lived with her 2 children right across the street from Danilo's. She was a lovely single mother of Terry, then 14, and Caitlin, 11, and was making a living by working as a seamstress. It was due to this that Danilo approached Heather. On November 6, 2002, he went to Heather's house because he wanted to gift his wife a new set of customized curtains. That same day, Heather noted that one of her spare keys had gone missing and suspected that Danilo might have mistakenly taken it when he was at her house. Several days passed by without any weird issues, but on November 12, everything changed. That morning, Heather took her kids to school and returned home only to find her demise. When her children came back from school, they found a scene so gruesome and shocking that, at first, they couldn't believe what they saw. After a few moments that lasted an eternity, they ran outside for help, and it was Danilo with his wife who first comforted them and took them into their house until they could calm down a bit. It was Terry who had the courage to call the police and told them that her mother was attacked, was lying on her back in the bathroom floor of their house. Once the police arrived at the scene, they were shocked and sick to their stomachs about what they found. It seemed that Heather was working as usual on her sewing machine when the killer attacked her with a strong object, possibly a hammer, several times, which caused her demise. After that, her body was dragged to the bathroom, where the killer continued to harm her body. Heather had a deep cut through her throat, almost ear to ear, and several other wounds in her chest area where her bra was cut. But the killer didn't stop there. Heather's breasts were mutilated, removed from her body, and then placed beside her head. What kind sick person would do this to a hardworking mother? The scene was horrific, like it was taken out of a horror movie. Still, the police found another weird element. All around the scene, there were several loose hairs that were believed to be Heather's, but further analysis indicated that the hairs recovered from her right hand were not hers but somebody else. This evidence was key to finding out the killer and would later help to solve not only Heather's case, but another cold case in a distant country. At first, Danilo was a person of interest for the police, but he had an alibi that placed him in another place at the time of the murder. However, investigators quickly found Restivo suspicious. There were no signs of forced entry, and according to Heather's children, Restivo had been in their home a few days prior, around the time the house keys went missing. He was also known to cut strands of hair from women's heads as he rode behind them on the bus, and Heather had strands of her own hair cut and placed in her hand. Still, with a lack of forensic evidence, building the case was a slow process. Danilo was let go again without being charged. The police needed to connect him directly to the crime scene in order to show he was guilty. They were counting on a towel with blood on it that was found in Heather's hallway the day she was killed. However, at the time, forensic technology wasn't good enough to separate and determine the different types of DNA that the towel had. It wasn't until 2008 that investigators re-examined the blood-stained towel discovered in Heather's home. They were able to distinguish the two DNA profiles, one belonging to Heather and the other to Danilo Restivo. With this vital evidence, investigators believe they have enough to charge Restivo with Heather's murder. While in the midst of Danilo's imminent arrest for the murder of his neighbor, Heather, a shocking find came from miles away. In 2010, a worker fixing a leak in the Church of the Most Holy Trinity's roof discovered a mummified skeleton in a small attic. It was Elisa. Her brother Gildo was right about her sister. She had never left church on the day she met Danilo. It must have been devastating for Elisa's family to finally have the confirmation of all their fears. Elisa was dead and painfully close to them all along. The investigators found similarities between the two cases. Elisa had a lock of hair in her hand, and so did Heather. Comparing both cases, the picture was getting clearer, and so was Danilo's involvement in both murders. While analyzing the cases, Danilo's signature was unmistakable. Both of the women had their trousers down and held their hair in their hands, which was a really peculiar and distinguishing characteristic for them to share. The most notable distinction was that Elisa's body was hidden, but Heather's was almost like put on display for everyone to see. After Elisa's body was found, Danilo was arrested for Heather's murder. In 2011, he was convicted of both killings, and he is currently serving a whole life order in prison in the UK. Although for his Elisa's murder, he is also facing extradition to Italy. Finally, Elisa and Heather's family found justice and solace after so many years. Well, folks, that's all for today. Thank you for staying all the way up to the end of this video. If you're down for this type of content, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We'll also love to know what you think about our content, so leave a comment and tell us all about it. See you next time.